Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to talk about something we love quite a bit on this podcast. That being, of course, movies. We can't get enough of them. They fuel our lives. We need more popcorn to go with our movies, though. So maybe we can make that happen at some point soon. Got a hankering for some buttery popped hot corn. It sounds so good. Hey, this week we are going to be reviewing A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, starring Robert Englund, of course, as Freddy Krueger, and Heather Langenkamp as Nancy. A lot of folks say the third film is the best in the whole franchise. We're going to get into that with some of our thoughts, of course, as we review this film. But before we can do that, let me introduce you to my co-hosts who are also here. Jim Pugliafico is in the virtual studio. Hey, sweetheart, how are you?
Hello, and thank you. I am in the virtual studio. Doing okay. Glad to be here. Ready to talk about this fun movie with you guys. Welcome everybody who's joining us. I'm looking forward to some cool comments tonight. That's always a lot of fun too when we get comments. So thank you for the introduction. Can't wait.
You're very welcome. We've already got a few folks with us in the live chat. Hello to everyone out there jumping on with us. Feel free to drop your thoughts and comments about Nightmare 3 as we go with our review this evening. But Will Lindis is also in the studio. Hey, Will, how's it going?
Hello and welcome to Prime Time, Bears. I'm so excited for this one. We set this one up not just in our last episode, but you know we've talked about this movie and the franchise a few times. You know, sort of here and there. Usually around Halloween over the past 8 years that we've been doing this. But I'm glad that we're finally able to dive into this one because, oh boy, I've got a lot to say. I know you do too. I'm super excited to be here.
Indeed. The excitement is palpable, Will.
You can feel it. You can feel it. You can feel the electricity in the air. Like, guys, you do not want to take your Hypnosil. You want to be dreaming about the episode we're about to drop.
Yeah, just be careful. Like, don't get too sleepy. You know, bad things happen when bears fall asleep.
What if we did an entire episode just in like the most monotone voice possible, just to get people to fall asleep, and then we trick them into making it it's like a surprise Krueger episode? Yeah.
Or we could just review the film.
Maybe we could do that too. We could do that too. But play with me in this space. We're gonna be Krueger monsters. I don't know. I'm just excited to talk about this one. Holy shit, I'm excited to talk about this one.
Well, me too, definitely.
I'm excited for your excitement about this one. Like, I I'm ready to hear. I have a feeling that this film is something that you guys holds a special place in your heart. So I can't wait to hear a bit about that, both of you.
It's because we love Dawkins so much.
You're big Dawkins fans.
We are fans of Dawkins.
We
love
Dawkins. We love Dawkins any chance we get.
I'm sure.
Anyway. Talking about Dawkins. That's my side podcast.
Dawkins talking.
It's like, like The Talking Dead or any of those shows. It's like you listen to Dawkins or you watch some Dawkins videos, whichever one you want to do. You listen to Dawkins while watching some Dawkins, and then you listen to Talking with Dawkins. Talking with Dawkins. Yeah. It's a thing.
But are you walking, talking, and Dawkins at the same time? That's the question. Yeah, anyway.
Walking and talking and docking with Dawkins?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh my gosh, sexy voice of the Movie Bears podcast. Chris Lopez is in the live chat. Hey, handsome, good to see you. He says,
"Hey, Chris.
Will appeared. I was hearing his voice and not seeing him. Spooky." Yeah, Will, your video dropped out there for a second. We could still hear you.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. He wanted to switch to the other side of the screen. That's why he.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah. Our streaming platform is consistent in its inconsistency, and we love it for it.
Perfect for its imperfections.
Yeah.
I'd say it's free. What you can do, what can you do? But it's not. We pay for it. So, maybe that's something to address at another time. But hey, Tony Gonzalez says, "Hey there, guys. Welcome, Tony. Glad to see you. Hello.
Hey, Tony.
All right, Jim, Will, are we ready to get down to it?
I think so. I know so. I know so.
I'm ready. Freddy.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Ready, Freddy. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. All right. Well, listen, we are going to spoiler this film pretty heavily. It's 30 plus 40. Oh, God. I don't even want to think about it. Years old at this point. It's getting up there. It's been out a while. If you haven't seen A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and you value your innocence where the plot is concerned, you may want to step away. Come back after you've seen it. But I think a lot of folks have probably seen it already. This is also one of those movies where I don't know that spoilers really impact you that much, to be honest.
There are some big twists.
Are there?
I'm not arguing to not do spoilers. I'm just saying there are some big twists that we probably will reveal. So just be There's at least one. There's at least one.
This is part of more of our like celebration of series than our hey, should you go watch this review style series? So I think we can just pull that spoiler band-aid off.
Yeah. Just be aware. That's all we ask. All right, guys, here we go. Our discussion of A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. We're the Dream Warriors. All right, let's get this conversation rocking and rolling. Let's go to Jim. Hey, sweetheart.
Hi.
Give us a little bit of a brief setup on this movie and tell us a little bit about your experience watching it, what you thought.
Yeah, so the film is A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. The A is important. It's in every one of these titles, but that I learned. It's A Nightmare on Elm Street. 3, Dream Warriors. So, as you might assume by the number in the title, this is the third A Nightmare on Elm Street movie. This one came out in 1987. A few years after the first movie, written and directed by Wes Craven, who basically invented this franchise, this series. It's his creation, and he came back as a writer for this third movie. So the plot of this movie, and I will read just the IMDb summary that says, a psychiatrist familiar with knife-wielding... Oh, here we go. A psychiatrist familiar with knife-wielding dream demon Freddy Krueger helps teens at a mental hospital battle the killer who is invading their dreams. And so, so shenanigans ensues in this movie because now we have Freddy Krueger, the dream demon slasher, old razor hands. I don't know. Does he have a nickname? Like old? Does he
call him the bastard son of 100 maniacs?
The bastard son of
Freddy, or Freddy Krueger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Freddy Krueger, or I just thought he had like old knife hands, or I don't know, whatever. But anyway, knife hand, right? I think it's just
jazz hands.
Yeah,
that's very important. A lot of people think he has knives on both hands,
but he does not.
It's just one.
Just one. And do you know which hand it is? It's his right hand. Just saying. That would not work for me. That would not work for me.
It's a good thing he's a lefty for other things.
Yeah, it's a very good thing. Wouldn't work for me, but whatever. So this one stars, let me see, of course, Robert Englund, reprising his role again as Freddy. He is basically Freddy. I think everybody who knows Robert Englund associates him with Freddy, period. Craig Wasson appears in this. May have seen Craig Wasson in things like think he was in like Blood Simple. I think he was in that early Coen Brothers movie, right? I think he was the main guy in that. This one had a very young Patricia Arquette in this movie too. Teen Patricia Arquette, Heather Langenkamp, a bunch of other teens, teen actors who I was IMDbing through the movie to see kind of what else I might have seen them in, but and they all had other roles. It's just not anything that kind of popped into mind. But yeah, I enjoyed this one. We made a popcorn movie out of this. This is your typical, straight ahead, no frills, no nonsense. Freddy invades your dreams and kills you kind of horror slasher movie. Well done. I think there are some unexpected turns in this one. We talked, Brad and I talked about this kind of, do you go into these movies expecting everybody to be killed? Do you expect there to be another final girl that comes out of this movie? How do the teens deal with Freddy? But I did enjoy this one quite a bit, especially because I know Brad is a big fan of this movie, and getting to watch it with him and was special. So yeah, I'm more interested to hear what you guys have to say about this one. I actually could have used a little bit more Freddy in this one. I wish we had gotten a little more, but that's probably my only knock on this movie. I think we got a little too much of the teens and not enough of the Freddy mayhem. But what do you guys think?
Well, I would say that's a fair thing to call out. There's always this fine line of like too much Freddy or not enough Freddy.
Yeah.
It's a hard balance to walk.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Will, how about for you? Because I know this was a much beloved movie in the past. You had mentioned that last week. Do you feel like there was enough Freddy, too little Freddy? And what were your thoughts on this film?
Yeah, so first of all, I'll lead this off by saying this was the first of the Freddy Krueger movies that I saw as a kid, and I think that everything that I saw afterwards, I love this franchise. I think even the worst movie in this franchise is better than some of the at least mid-tier films of some of the other franchises, but this one strikes a perfect balance for me, and it is my favorite Freddy Krueger movie because he is still a very terrifying threat. In some of the later movies, he does become a little more cartoony and he kind of leans more on the one-liners more. And that's fun and that's exciting and that's interesting to see. He is still a terrifying force here, but you start to see the kills sort of go in this very creative pattern here. This is my favorite Freddy Krueger movie. This is also... While if gun to my head, would I say that there's maybe some technically better horror films out there? Of course, there's some wonderful things, but in terms of like personal favorites, this is my favorite horror movie. Like this is like the one that I've watched the most, and the one that I will probably watch the most and I think that a lot of us I'm almost 40. No matter what movie comes out from here on out, no matter how good it is, it also has to compete with like 30 years of like adoration for me. So I don't think that anything's probably ever going to dethrone this. This is probably going to be my favorite horror movie until I die. And I'm good with that. I like the amount of Freddy that we have in this. When he shows up on screen, he's menacing. But for me, and this is part of the reason I love this one so much, this is probably my favorite overall cast of kids in probably most horror movies. All of the kids at the psychiatric ward are all very interesting characters who you can tell have their struggle, their own demons that they have to conquer, but they also have their interests, their personality quirks, and we see how they interact with one another very well. There's not a character in this whose name I don't remember or whose like personality trait I don't remember of that kind of like that core group of people. So even though there's only, spoiler alert, there's only 6 kills in this entire movie. Freddy only gets 6 people in this entire movie, and the first one doesn't happen until like 32 minutes into the movie. Like this movie is not like out to just like throw a bunch of bodies at them, but every single one of them feels impactful. It hurts when you see certain characters go. It scares you when you see certain other characters go. There's so much to love about this. Like you mentioned Patricia Arquette. This was her very first role. This was Lawrence Fishburne shows up in this, and this is post Pee Wee Herman, but before kind of like the rest of his career took off. Because, so it's this kind of transitional role for him. The return of the wonderful Heather Langenkamp, not her last appearance in one of these movies, but definitely the last appearance as this iteration of this character. We got to see the return of one of the all-time best Final Girls, as well as the passing of the torch, and the kickoff to a kind of a mini trilogy within this franchise. 3, 4, and 5 form kind of a little mini trilogy of Dream Warriors to Dream Master to Dream Child. I love this movie so much. I want to keep going and talking about it, but I know, Brad, you are also super into this one as well. I know we talked a little bit about that last week, so I'm going to pass the Claude baton over to you so that we can, I'm guessing, continue the love train.
I hated this movie. What are you talking about? No, I'm just kidding, obviously.
Yeah.
It's funny. I saw the original Nightmare on Elm Street, I think, when I was like, I don't know, 3 or something. I was pretty traumatized by that as a kid. But when the third one came out in 87, I was a little older. I was a little wiser. And I actually got to see that one in theaters. And I begged my mom and dad to take me to see it. And my mom was like, Bradley Harris, you are not seeing that horror movie. And my dad was like, come on, son, let's go. And I was like, all right, Dad, okay. Went to see this movie. And I was still scared by it. But this movie leans more into some of the funny Freddy than the first couple films did. And I think that toned some of the scariness down for me, not in a bad way. Like, it's still a horror movie. Like, it's still scary, but like it adds an element of dark, I hate to say comedy, but just funny little moments. Like,
it's
for instance, when the Jennifer character, who is like obsessed with becoming a movie star or a TV star, when she dies, Freddy like grabs her and puts her through a TV, and he's like, welcome to prime time, bitch. And I just remember thinking, like, that was so funny, and it like broke up the tension a little bit kind of as you went. And so I think it made it more effective as a scary movie for me, because it's like, I get tense. Oh, funny. Okay. Things are fine again. Oh my God. Tense. And you're on like this roller coaster. And I love that about this film. I really want to go back and watch 4 and 5. Jim, I don't know if you're interested in that, since we saw the first one in this mini trilogy. But it's definitely my favorite of those 3, and probably my favorite of the whole franchise. I really liked A New Nightmare quite a bit. And Freddy versus Jason is just schlocky fun. But for me, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is like my definitive Nightmare franchise film. And Chris Lopez asked an interesting question, because Jim, you had mentioned, like, was Freddy on screen enough? Chris had asked, should Freddy be on screen as much as Godzilla? And Chris, for me, I kind of feel like it's kind of similar. Like, in the Godzilla movies, you got to have just enough Godzilla for him to be a real threat, to give you all the great, chills and thrills of Godzilla. But if it's all Godzilla all the time on screen, it loses a lot of the impact. And I feel like it's the same way with Freddy. Like, the more you see Freddy, the less scary he gets. And I think in some of the later films, we lose a lot of the scary Freddy. It leans too much into the humor. He's on screen too much sometimes. So I feel like this movie is the almost perfect blend of like Freddy versus other stuff going on. Will, I know you mentioned kind of like we have an awful lot of the teens. Jim, you called this out too. I actually really liked that about this movie compared to some of the other ones. I think that can be a really good thing. To this day, it still guts me when my favorite of the teens gets killed Will Stanton, the kid in the wheelchair who becomes the wizard master in his dreams. The way he's like, in the name of Lord, Prince of Elves, demon be gone, with the lightning out of his hands. I don't know. It's cheesy. It's dumb. But like, I don't know. I've dreamed that I'm a wizard before with magical powers. We've been watching a lot of Merlin lately. I had a dream the other night where I had magic powers. Thank God Freddy Krueger didn't show up because he'd probably still kill my ass anyway. But I've always thought the idea of lucid dreaming to be really, really fascinating. Like if you can become aware that you're dreaming and assert some control over your dreams, you can make yourself fly, you can give yourself magic powers, you know, you do all these cool things. So the fact that Patricia Arquette in her first role in a film, you know, her character was able to connect with Nancy, you know, the heroine from the first film who I fucking love. She's one of my final girl heroes of all time. You know, pull her in and start pulling the other teens in and connect them. I just thought that was such a neat mechanic because previously people are experiencing their dreams and their kills with Freddy alone. It's a very solitary experience. So like, you know, what happens if you team up against Freddy as a group? I thought that was a neat question that this film kind of attempted to answer. So
Dream Warriors assemble.
That's right. Dream Avengers. Can that be the next Freddy film? That'd be amazing. Anyway, I love this one very much, and I could probably keep just gushing for many more minutes. But yeah, I was so happy when the idea of talking about this one came up last week because this is a fave.
Yeah, it's such a good one. Like you mentioned, you know, like the kids are all so interesting and so fascinating that it's really easy to make a case for each one being your favorite one in different ways. And I always think about like, you know, okay, if like Jason or Michael Myers or someone that's like on this planet chasing me around with an actual knife on actual Earth within the movie, of course. It's a matter of like stamina and strength and survival and stuff like that. But kind of fighting Freddy Krueger, it's more like a battle of like wills in a lot of way, right? And this is the one that sort of said, hey, you know, like you can use your willpower to sort of like fight back against this like otherwise unbeatable foe. And I like that they all got their dream powers, but they were not like, I mean, none of them was like, and granted, later on, there are some that are like, I want to be a straight up superhero or something like that. There is one that tries that in 5. But I like that this one here has the kids are like, okay, I can do cool flips. I love playing D&D. I can do that. In my dreams, I'm beautiful and bad. Like they all have these like you can see like the like where they're pulling all of that stuff from. And in a lot of their cases, their power also kind of stems from their trauma that they've experienced up to that, and that makes them all the more compelling. You mentioned Will. You know, this is a character who, you know, I've been a DM for like decades now. Like, you know, I get the Will character a lot. Like he's like, you know, like I've never been wheelchair bound, but like I get this character. But he has this other thing that he's got. And I was afraid rewatching this one, like I knew that he bested the wheelchair, but it was one of those, like, I really want to see how they handle it, you know, and this is a character who Freddy tries to use this, like, wheelchair as, like, a vice, as a thing, and he doesn't make it, but that's not what does him in. That's not what does him in. If anything, it's even more terrifying because Freddy, in addition to all these, like, crazy kills, sometimes he just walks up and fucking, like, guts you, too, and that's what happened here. I thought that was so great. I love the Jennifer going into the television. Later on, Freddy gets a lot more lines. Here, he gets to be punchy. But that's kind of it. That's kind of the line. And interesting note, I think this was the one time that Robert Englund like went off script and improvised something. He's normally like known for being like one of those more like kind of stick to the script style actors, which is totally valid. But he improvised the "Welcome to Prime Time, bitch" line, which is probably like the go-to Freddy line. So I just think that's cool lore.
Yeah, I did like the wheelchair stuff. Didn't Freddy turn it into like a a torture chair at one point.
It becomes this like giant chair with like spikes on it.
It looked like the oubliette from Labyrinth, like coming down the hallway.
That was a really cool scene. And I think the favorite of my teens was probably Kincaid. Because like he was, first of all, he was the potty mouth of the group. I think he got more F-bombs than anybody else in the movie.
When Kincaid's like, Kruger, you fucking pussy.
I did like Kincaid. And he survived, right? To the end, I think.
He did.
Yes, he did. He was one of the final kids.
And I think this movie killed just as many adults as it killed teens, right? I think let me see. The cop
two
got
adults
it,
and 4 kids.
The cop got it.
Nancy and her dad.
Nancy and her dad.
And then the
he didn't
4
kill
kids
one.
were
he didn't
Taryn, Will, Jennifer, and Philip.
Oh, that's right. Nancy and her dad. Because he probably wouldn't kill anybody else because he's not in their dreams, right? I mean, like, they're not kind of tied to the wrongs that were supposedly done to Freddy, this child.
He wants the Elm Street kids.
And even with Nancy, like, she's kind of aged out, but you know, she's taking this medication that supposedly like prevents her from getting bad dreams. I've always wondered why she kept taking that medication, like, because at the end of the first movie, she turns her back on Freddy, takes his power, and he goes away. So I'm like, well, why is she still,
she had the key?
This, you know, but like if he wasn't bothering her anymore, you know, did she need to take that medicine? I don't know. Well, I wanted to explore that.
Yeah, and not just between the hypnosil, but also sort of the aging out of it is, I think, part of why, like, I love that Freddy has a nemesis in Nancy. Like Freddy, when he sees her again, you know, like, he's ready to, like, sort of, like, close the book on that chapter that he never got to finish. And I love that, like, one of the things Freddy does, and this is part of why he's so menacing without getting as many kills, he leaves a kid alive very intentionally as bait to try to pull Nancy and Kristen and all of them back in. Like, that's why Joey, like, you know, he leaves him like strung up over the flames, is to sort of lure Nancy and Kristen represent 2 things he definitely doesn't want: someone who has power over him and someone who's beat him before in the past. And I love that he's smart enough to say, like, no, fuck that, I'm gonna try something different this time.
I went back and before the podcast here, I went back and searched for the theatrical trailer for this movie and watched it.
Oh, nice.
And it's a classic teaser trailer. Like, it's awesome. It's basically, I don't know if you remember it, but it's basically like a little girl. She's in bed. She's holding like a dollhouse. Like, she's holding the model of the house, right? That's in the movie. And it's just that kind of that children's song in the background. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. You know, and it's going like that all through the song, and you're like, okay, this is fucking boring. And then all of a sudden, like, Freddy's right hand like comes crashing through the house, and it just goes on the screen, like close up, and it scared the shit out of me.
If that trailer were cut today, we would have seen 5 of the 6 deaths and hinted at the
exactly.
One.
Yeah, it was. I think it's awesome. It doesn't give anything away from the movie, and it still, like, gives you the feeling like, oh my god, I got to see this movie. If this trailer is that creepy and scary, then I gotta go see it. But it's really good. I liked it.
Well, you're not the only one who felt like it was good. That you enjoyed it, Jim. I'm catching up with the live chat. I was like not even looking at it because I was so enthralled by the things we were talking about. But Michael in the chat says we should have called this movie The Return of Nancy. Michael, I kind of love that idea. I remember as a kid, though, I was surprised that she showed up. I was like happy to see Nancy because she was the hero for the first one. Yes. So I feel like maybe that would give that away a little bit. But I really love that this movie brought Heather Langenkamp back as the Nancy character. I kind of love that we see her again in A New Nightmare and sort of this meta role, you know, as herself as the actress. Like, that was super interesting. But it was neat to see Nancy as an adult try to help these kids deal with not just, Freddy and everything going on, but like also their trauma too. Like seeing Kristen just fucking losing it when they were trying to sedate her, and Nancy just starts singing the song.
Yeah.
And Kristen like calms down and like just falls against her. And I don't know, like it's a horror movie, but like that was a powerful human moment that I really loved.
Those screams that Patricia Arquette gave to that character, like in that scene, they're pretty. They make the hair on your head stand up. I mean, like they're pretty visceral screams.
She is a good scream queen. Like you have to be able to pull off a good scream, and not everyone can. Yeah, hers are solid.
Right. And but by the way, he said that it probably should have been the name. They were gonna name it either The Return of Nancy or The Return of Wes Craven, and they couldn't decide like which one to go with. So they just said, "Fuck it, we're gonna call it Dream Warriors."
Mike Lovins is here. Hey, Magic Mike, Real Gay Podcast. He says, I used to have dreams of Freddy, and I would make myself Wolverine in my dreams and kick his ass. Oh my god, I kind of want to see like a fan film of that. Mike, could you and Peter like maybe make that happen somehow? Like dress Pete up as Freddy and you be Wolverine. And
can you imagine the sound effects you could get into with the two, like with Freddy's hand like hitting the what is it, timantium? What is it? Adamantium blades of Wolverine and going ching ching ching, like that would be awesome.
Welcome to prime time, bub.
Oh, that'd be fun, definitely. But Hamstract is here with us as well. Oh my gosh, so many friendly faces here. He says, I'm right there with you on the idea of lucid dreaming. Dream Warriors was the first time I considered that lucid dreaming could even be a thing, even though I didn't know what it was called at the time. Yeah, it's this like whole dream culture thing that I didn't know was a thing either, Hammy, until I was in college. And I was kind of researching that. And like a lot of people are able to lucid dream at will. Not at you, Will, but
no, not at me.
The ability,
Or if they'd like to, bring it on.
Dream at me. Go ahead, dream at me.
Dream at me, bro. Come on.
And I've always been super jealous. Like I wish I could do that. I have lucid dreams, now and then, and they're great. Like you just realize you're dreaming and you're like, oh my god, I want to fly now. You're Superman. That happens in my dreams probably more than I should probably admit on a podcast. But I wish it was something that I could just make happen anytime I wanted. And I think that's one of the reasons why I found, the kids and the dream mechanic in this film so fascinating. Because it's like, thanks to Kristen and Nancy, they now have this ability, right? They can live out their dream power. They can be maybe their truer selves. Like Taryn, for instance. Will, you kind of did a little impression of Taryn earlier that was making Jim and I giggle because we were envisioning you with like a mohawk and like fishnet with, switchblades. But it was interesting because like, she goes into her badass self. She's like, I'm beautiful and bad. But then like Freddy, in one of the creepiest fucking scenes in the whole film, his knives become syringes full of heroin or something, and she's got these little mouths on her arms, and he like sticks them right in there, and then you see the syringes like emptying into those little holes.
And it's especially tragic because earlier in the movie, the kind of the skeevy orderly is like, hey Taryn, you want to go over to the supply closet and we'll have sex and do drugs? And she not only rebukes him, but she's like, she's a recovering addict. So this is someone who has already, in a lot of ways, already is a badass in that they fought down one of the hardest things that you can possibly do and has come out the other side of it. And it sucks that Freddy used that as her weakness and sort of preyed upon it, but it's part of what makes him, even though that was like kind of silly, like the mouths and the fingers and the what a rush, all of that, like, want to get high, like all of that stuff is like, it's funny, Yeah, hamstring. You know, what are but it's terrifying because he went to like the thing that would most debilitate her, and he just went straight for it. That's terrifying.
Oh yeah,
You know,
for sure.
Hamstrak says something else here in chat here about I would love to see Frank Darabont and Chuck Russell team up on something again. Dream Warriors and the Blob remake were top shelf 80s horror movie. Yeah. 100% on that. Frank Darabont is one of those writers who I don't know that he gets enough credit. I think he gets a lot of credit. He's not an unknown, but he wrote some absolutely stellar scripts. You know, The Blob. He wrote the screenplays for both back to back, well, rather back to back. You know, he had a gap between, but they were two films that he did in a row. He did The Green Mile. He adapted that, and he did The Mist, which I think is arguably. I mean, The Shining exists, but it exists by itself on its own little mountain. But if you take that out, I think The Mist might be the best Stephen King adaptation. And it works so well because Darabont did some pretty amazing things to both take that script forward and also kind of take it in some different directions. So yeah, 100% love the Frank Darabont love from Hammy.
I think I'm mixing up The Mist with The Fog, which is one of the worst.
Easy mistake to make.
Which was the one with Adrian Barbeau.
The Mist was the one that it came out in 2007. He both wrote and directed. And it was like Thomas Jane and like 3 or 4 actors who would go on and be in The Walking Dead. Like Frank Darabont went and did a lot with the Walking Dead and brought like half of the cast of The Mist with him over to it.
I'm mixing it up with The Fog.
So just bringing things back to Nightmare real quick. Jesse in the chat says, I saw this in a theater, and the next day I drew Freddy as a worm in class eating Kristen when I was in grade school. They called my parents into school the next day. Jesse, it's interesting that you mentioned that because that's both an incredibly scary scene, but like an oddly sexual scene. Like, I don't know, seeing Freddy's mouth around Patricia Arquette's middle and like flailing her around. I don't know. It's a really disturbing image for me every time I see this movie, including when we watched it the other day, babe. But I can only imagine what they must have thought when they saw you drawing that. It's pretty crazy.
Was that a Frank Oz creation? That's what I want to know. Was the giant Freddy a Frank Oz creation? I don't know, because it kind of felt like that. It felt like the scene from Little Shop of Horrors, right? Where Audrey is it's kind of like the same thing. I wonder if the one in if they kind of got a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? Motivation or maybe inspiration from that. Yeah. But yeah, that scene was really cool. That was during the gang up scene, right? That was when all the kids were in there and they're trying to battle Freddy kind of all at the same time. And he turns into this like giant worm slug kind of thing, which was really kind of frightening, actually. Like you could, probably one of the tensest and more frightening parts of the film, I thought.
It's also like to give some love to there's several special effects visual artists on this, but sort of like Doug Beswick and his group. They did like a lot of like the stop motion, especially like those really neat scenes when like the puppet that's in Philip's room turns into the
there was a Godzilla in that scene too, by the way.
Oh, so there you go. That's our crossover. But he also did a lot of the stop motion in like Evil Dead 2 and like the by he, I mean he and his team. But in Evil Dead 2 and the sandworms in Beetlejuice. So like there's a lot of like he is just one of those people who like puts out some incredibly solid work. And he does here as well. I loved the puppets in this. They're only there for like Freddy puppets only on screen for like 6 seconds, but it's super memorable.
Yeah, speaking of stop motion, there was also, and I can only assume this was like a deliberate love letter to the Harryhausen like skeletons, like Clash of the Titans, stop motion scene. But seeing the bones of Freddy Krueger like animated in the real world, like, you know, slashing it up. Yeah. It's kind of cool, you know, to see that back then.
And I love when there's a spot where he's diverting his attention back and forth between the two groups. And one of my favorite little moments of the animation in this is when he's just gotten done fucking up the dad, and he's thrown the psychiatrist into the grave, and then he's standing at the top of it, and then he just collapses into a pile of bones again so he can go back in. That's just such a cool, like, they could have done anything with that and it'd have been fine because it wasn't important. We needed to get Freddy back in there. But instead they said, you know what, let's make this look cool.
Yeah,
I love that.
You know what else? You know what else made this film look cool?
What was that?
Little something we like to call Dockin'.
Yeah.
Now, okay, question.
Yeah.
The song was not in the movie, right?
It was the end theme.
End theme, yeah.
End theme, okay. It would have been better if they kind of incorporated the video into the movie. I think it would have been much better. Like, the video is kind of fun to watch, like especially after you've seen the movie, and then kind of see these scenes kind of interlaced, I guess, with scenes of the band in the same on the same set or in the same setting. But it just made me wish like that there was actually Dokken in the movie. That would have been, I think, really cool.
Yeah, it would have been neat to, like, I don't know, maybe have that very famous Dream Warrior song maybe on the radio while Kristen was like working on her paper mache, you know, Freddy house. But even though it wasn't in the film, you know, technically, what a great way to close that out. And I remember my brother watching, you know, MTV and that video coming on, and he would just be like, "Oh, it's the Freddy Krueger video," and he hated it. He thought it was dumb. He thought it was cheesy. But I would like fucking run in there to watch that video. Cheesy as fuck, but so good. I love seeing Freddy Krueger like wake up at the end holding the little blonde dolly. You know, and he's like, oh. It's fun.
Hey,
yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Will.
It's a good blend. It's a good blend of fun music. Like, it is a fun song. It was also, you know, rock music, and, you know, like, granted, like, you know, it's
hair metal.
It's not necessarily, it's hair metal. It's not necessarily like hard edge stuff, but there's always been like a symbiotic relationship between like metal and horror. Like, the two weave in and out of each other, and have since, you know, for decades now. So I love this pairing. I love this pairing.
I mentioned that there
real quick. Sorry, babe.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
1 second. So Mike Levins, and absolutely, Mike, you are right. He says that was a Dokken song playing when she worked on the house, just not Dream Warriors. Right. And that's what I meant. Like, if that was the song that was playing, you know, then to reprise that at the end, like, might have worked a little better. But yeah, good catch. Definitely was also Dokken.
Yeah. I want to talk about the huge twist, and I know it sounds like we're going to watch like 4 and 5. I guess there were like 9 films altogether. Somebody was telling me, because it was a remake, you know.
7, 8, 9. Yeah. So if you count the remake is number 9.
Right. So, and I know we're probably going to go watch some of these other ones. I think it would be fun as popcorn movies to fill the time during COVID.
Let's do it.
But
$49.99, I can buy the bundle of all the movies right now. I'm looking at it this second. So is it worth it?
Yeah,
yes, it is.
Probably. I gotta say though that the digital version that we watched was not great. There were some issues with the way the film was projected, or I don't know if it was if the film needs a restoration or something, like the print, whatever. But it didn't look that great, especially in some of the dark scenes. It kind of looked a little like pixelated and crappy. I don't know if that was a service we were watching it on or not. But what I want to talk about was there's a twist in this movie. There is a nun in the film who shows up a couple of times, right? You got to have you know, in these horror movies, you got to have some kind of religious angle, right? Even though really doesn't play a part in Freddy's story all that much. But there's a nun, and we find out toward the end of the film that this nun is actually Freddy's mother. So we don't have daddy issues in this movie as much as we have mommy issues, right? And I think we saw that in what was the one we just did? Camp Crystal Lake.
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th,
right? Mommy issues. So we have mommy issues in this one as well. But my question is, and maybe you can't answer this because you might spoil me, do they ever do anything with that angle?
I 100% will answer by saying there is definitely an arc through 3, 4, and 5. They do stuff with it, but
yeah,
cool.
Just watch and enjoy that ride. But yes, that's not one of those random. The Halloween franchise is really bad about doing that. About like, oh, here we've just made up some new lore and then never coming back to it or not coming back to it. Well, this one does something with it.
Yeah, like a big reveal at the end, like, oh my God, that's Freddy's mother. I wonder what, let's find out more about her other than her being the creepy nun that goes around warning everybody, what to do, what not to do. So that makes me even more excited then to see the follow-up of these films.
They give that lore, the fact when she tells that story, and we don't know that it's actually about her
his conception,
right? Yeah. About how this woman was locked for a whole weekend, in this old sanatorium with 1,000 maniacs who raped her 1,000 times. You don't picture this happening to the kindly but also creepy nun. You're just thinking it's some lady in the back of your head. But then when we find out at the funeral scene, right, that the nun was really Amanda Kruger, it kind of like recast her in this whole different light. And it just, even watching it the other day, it still gave me like literal chills. Thinking about that.
It's a horrendous thing to go through. And of course, like with the kind of the caveat of like, if you were a child of sexual assault, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. If you're born out of wedlock, you're not a bad person. But within the lore of this, like, it creates an incredibly terrifying origins, like superhero sort of supervillain origin story for our Kruger character. And it, there is always like a strong tie for a lot of horror movies to tie religion in a lot of cases very specifically. Like they do a lot of like Catholicism references in a lot of like horror movie franchises in different ways. But this wasn't a one and done. They actually use it to sort of build into the character, and then that informs through the rest of the franchise. That informs some of the choices that Freddy makes, and that also informs some of the different things that end up happening within the story. So it's and granted, it's not all like masterclass writing stuff. I will say, just to set you up, Jim, this trilogy of 3 movies, I think each one has diminishing returns over the last one. They're all still fun as fuck, but like 4 is a little worse than 3 and 5 is a little worse than 4. But at least the writers took the time to say, like, let's do something with these things.
Yeah. Well, I gotta know, and I'm gonna ask both of you the same question. What Will, you mentioned that this is your absolute favorite of this franchise and probably your favorite horror movie or slasher movie. Yeah. What and you mentioned a lot of things that you love about the movie. What do you think makes it stand out for you? What do you think gives it that special number one spot for you?
Well, two things. One, I can't ignore the fact that I saw it at an age when I was forming my kind of formative opinions on things. And I think that at a certain point, those become so nested at the core of you that you can build on top of it and add new things, but those things are always going to be the core. This one, I don't know why we never bought it, but I easily rented this thing 10 times, as a kid. We would go to the rental store and I would pick this one up again and pick this one up again. It was something always go back to because it was a perfect blend for me. It was scary, but not so it wasn't like shit your pants scary, but it's still like when you're a kid, like the boogeyman's gonna get me in my dreams. That's scary, but it's also funny, but not so funny that it diminishes from the threat of things. It empowers you. You feel like you have a fighting chance back, but you don't feel so empowered that like the villain loses its fangs. It feels like if there's like a bunch of different like balances of too far this, like almost like a Goldilocks situation, of like too hot, too cold, just right. All of those different things. This film is sort of the baby bear of all of those, like kind of the just right of all of those different things it's trying to balance.
How about for you, babe?
For me, it's the kids. And it's so funny to say that because typically in a horror movie, I find the teens to be annoying as fuck, and I can't wait for all of them to die off. But just something about the teen characters in this film. I mean, each of them I connected with in some way, and I related to them in some way. And when they are killed, the ones that die, I feel something for them. Like, I'm sad that they're gone. I wanted to see more of them. Whereas, like, Friday the 13th, I wanted to murder every fucking one of those kids myself. Not that I would ever murder children in real life, but I'm like rooting for the bad guy. In this case, I'm wanting to see Will use his D&D magic against Freddy. I want to see Kincaid use those muscles. By the way, wore a sleeveless shirt in honor of Kincaid today. I want to see Joey. Oh my God, we haven't even really talked about
Joey,
who's mute the whole movie, finds his voice in that crazy scene where they all come together, breaks the mirrors, saves them. God, like, I don't know, like even Taryn, like, I'm not a girl. I'm also not a badass, but like, I can identify.
But you are beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I can identify, like drawing inner strength from your own trauma and like making that something that you can turn into a positive for yourself. So I think that's what does it for me. It's the perfect blend of, scary villain meets characters that you care about. And yeah,
I think that's a good point. I mean, this movie has these teens who are already struggling, right? They're struggling. So you have some, and the movie sets them up so you have some empathy for these characters, right? Whereas in a movie like Friday the 13th, they're just jerky kids, working at a camp, and they're all kind of got egos and all this stuff. So it makes it definitely, as a comparison, makes that empathy for these characters definitely, I think, is a strength of the film, right? So it elevates the stakes for the kills for me, and for the danger that they're in. But also, I think for both of you, I think you probably came across this movie at kind of like the same stage in your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Pre-adolescent, adolescent, time in your life where you're kind of feeling that, like, oh, I can watch like big people movies now, right? I can watch this this horror movie and not just Scooby-Doo. So so that, I think that's kind of interesting too.
The time that you watch a movie is so important to it. Like, there's some considered to be amazing movies that I didn't watch at the same time as some of my peers, because that just happens. You don't watch every movie. For whatever reason, growing up, I watched Monster Squad on loop. I had a VHS that had that. It was Monster Squad, Labyrinth, Lost Boys, and it was like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe cartoon. And that tape there was my favorite one. I would start that, and but for some reason, as many times as I watched that, I never watched Goonies as a kid. I didn't watch Goonies for the first time until my 20s. And because I didn't have that, like, I feel like I could be one of these kids going on this adventure moment, my experience was much more like lukewarm compared to like everyone else's. And I know that that's less to do with the film and more about where I found it. But the other part about it is, and I've mentioned this before, just like this is what me and my mom would do, like it was just me and my mom and my sister, and my mom and I would watch horror movies all the time. We would rent horror movies. Like we would go and we would rent them. I remember there was a Boy Scout trip where she's, as much as she loves horror movies, she hates spiders, and she was going to be one of our chaperones because she's a nurse. And there were a bunch of spiders around the camp. She said, William, I know you wanted to do this camping trip, but like, I just don't know if I can do this. If we bailed now, we'll just have a weekend of like ordering pizza and watching horror movies. I'm like, done. Yes.
You want.
And so we did. We went, we rented a bunch of movies, watched a bunch. And then the year after that, she, I still have it. She got me this Freddy Krueger Halloween mask, and it was expensive. Because it's a full-on latex
mask.
Cool mask. Wow. It's got some age on it. It's almost 30 years now, but it was just one of those things where it's like I had this love for this thing, not just because of the time that I got to it, although that was part of it, but also because like that was our bonding thing. That's our family.
Sure. It's funny, like you think about these formative things that you saw as a kid, right? Samuel Lopez, hey, yeah. He says, I watched The Witches so many times when I was a kid. Hey, Handsome, thanks for calling that movie out, because that was another one for me too. And it's like they almost become part of your identity in a way, right? It makes up like your pop culture
the
and
background of your life, yeah.
Right, yeah, that's a great way of putting that. And so, not to sound like the get off my lawn, old man thing, but like, yeah, I watch a lot of newer horror movies or newer animated movies or superhero movies, whatever. And like for me, my brain always goes back to the formative films that I saw in those categories, right? When I watch a superhero movie, my brain compares it against Superman the movie with Christopher Reeve. When I see a new horror movie, my brain compares it with the original Nightmare on Elm Street, right? I think that's just a natural thing that happens. I think it's great to celebrate those films, but I also wonder, does that baggage of nostalgia hold us back from appreciating newer things?
Not for me, because
it's a good question.
It's a good question, and it's a fair question. I'll say not for me, because I still have that same like hunger that I've always had. I think that like I've probably got my Mount Rushmore has already been like carved in stone, on my soul. Like some of those formative movies, I don't have my formative years left. Like everything here is it's not downhill, but it's definitely I'm not a kid anymore. But I still have that same hunger to find those fun discoveries, like to like with applications like Shudder, providing just like a lot of really cool horror movies, not like the big studio stuff that kind of feels very formulaic. There's some weird, creative, super cool shit that is still being made right now. A lot of it for like $1 million or left, and a lot of it going straight out to streaming. And it's stuff that will absolutely blow your mind. And I love that. I think for me, it's less that it's made. I think that it's a direct line for me. I think because I have this strong foundation that I built as a kid, I'm able to always use that as my basis, but still kind of like hunger and add more and build on and grow until I've got this just like massive weight of like horror movies, just like that I'm just like swimming and surrounded in and like breathing in all the time. So that's just me, though. I do know that it is possible to go the other way too and say like I'm a little this way with music sometimes, just like I find myself like, oh, there's new stuff, and I love the new stuff, and I want to listen to the new stuff. But like when I'm feeling kind of shitty, I'll listen to like 90s or 80s music and just sort of like kind of retreat back into that shell. So I get it.
Very fair. Very fair.
Mm-hmm.
We got some good comments rolling, guys.
We do. Oh my gosh, so many.
I like Hamstrax.
Yeah, Hamstrax is nothing like a child murdering demon to bring friends and family together. And that's so true. I mean, I went to see Nightmare on Elm Street 3 with my dad when the fourth one came out. Like, I watched that with my dad. Not so much my mom. She wasn't really so much into the horror movies, but that was just kind of a thing, you know, that we did and that we shared. So I totally get where you're coming from there, Hammy. Jordan, hey Jordan, he says they should make a Castlevania real live action movie. Holy fuck. Will, what do you think about that?
Love it, especially now that we've seen just how amazing. Like, there's an animated series that's on Netflix.
Yes.
And it's super good. So,
oh my god,
we can do it. Like, we can tell. We know that we can tell that kind of story and make it compelling. And I think that increasingly we've found how to maximize small budgets and to write good television shows. Like, there's a lot of really great serialized television happening right now. And by right now, I mean kind of over the last few years. And all of this stuff builds and builds and builds up to it. Yeah, 100%. Like, I think you could do a good Castlevania. I mean, hell, we just had a good Witcher. I think you already have like some, you know, I think you have some of those DNA pieces that you could sort of pull that direction.
Yeah, let's mix some DNA together and get it going.
Well, that is for MBP.
Wait, we're talking about something else.
That's different. This is different.
Oh gosh. Bruce is here. Hey Bruce. He says Breakfast Club on Elm Street. Holy shit.
I love that mashup.
Love to watch Judd Nelson just get slaughtered by Freddy Krueger. That would be amazing.
My favorite part would be the end when like Freddy's killed all the kids and he walks out in slow motion, puts the freeze frame, puts the claw up in the air.
Jump.
Don't you dream about me, bitch.
You got it, Will. It's done.
Oh, that's amazing. I would stalk teens and kill them in their dreams for that movie. It'd be amazing.
And there's the audio drop.
Oh goodness. Well, gentlemen, any final thoughts on A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 : Dream Warriors before we move on?
This seems like it would be a good one to watch. Again, where a lot of us are still in our shelter in place bubbles right now, right? Like, you know, we're not able to hang out and see each other in person the way that we used to. And that sucks. But this seems like it would be a good one if you have one of those like watch together style apps, like, or, you know, one of those platforms where everyone, like you and your friends, can watch a movie together. I think this would be a good one for that because it's engaging enough to keep your attention, but it's also not one where, like, if you stop to, like, you know, do a little, like, you know, like, oh my gosh, that kill was so cool, like in chat with your friends or whatever, it's like that. It's not like you're going to miss that one little piece of lore that'll make you not get the rest of the movie. Like, this would be a fun one to watch with some of your horror movie friends.
Well, I think you just clinched it. Samuel Lopez says, that's it. Elm Street Marathon when I get home.
Yes.
Do it.
Yes.
All right.
Do it.
We're going to do it too.
And I'll be happy to report back on my first watching of the fourth and fifth movie too when we did.
I got to tell you, I'm ecstatic to see what you think.
I'm not even sure I've ever seen the second movie, to be honest with you.
Oh,
the gay one?
Really? Yes.
You need to watch that one and then watch the documentary about it back to back. That's a good 1-2 punch. 2 is a weird one, and it sort of fits outside of the story of the rest of them in a lot of ways, but it has some merit of its own, and the documentary is super, super good.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we own all of the movies now. I just bought the 9-film package. So if you want to watch 4 and 5 and then circle back to 2 and watch the doc, that might be a good way to do that. That way we don't break up the narrative.
Okay, gotcha.
But however you want to navigate through it, we'll make it work for sure.
Sure.
Cool. All right. Jordan says, what's that streaming on? Jordan, I found them for rent I don't know that they're on like Netflix or Hulu or HBO.
Or Amazon.
So if you have HBO Max, 4 and 5, I know are on there.
Okay.
I watched them a couple weeks ago. I watched 4 and 5 a couple of weeks ago on HBO Max, and then I ended up having to like rent it from I think Apple when I did 3 pretty recently because it for some reason wasn't in there. I think only like 3 of them are in HBO Max,
Which is too bad because like, gosh, the first one is wonderful and like it gives you all the foundational knowledge you need to enjoy 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, they're coming up as at least this one, Dream Warriors, is coming up as just a rent. But it's like a $3 rent. It's one of the low, it's not a big price rent, and it's on, Amazon, Apple TV, Vudu. So yeah, it's out there, but not for free streaming.
Rent.
Yeah,
$3 rent. All right. Well, gentlemen, let's transition into some plugs as we look to wrap up for this week. Let's go to Will first. Will, of course, this is the part of the show where we put something we're excited about on people's radars. What have you got for plugs this week?
First of all, this has been a good week. I found a few random discoveries. Like, let me just try this. And each time I did, I ended up finding a movie that I absolutely fell in love with. And the one that I want to highlight is a movie that I was not expecting great things out of at all. Because of its, honestly, it's because of its poster. But it ended up blowing me away. It's a movie called Spontaneous. Spontaneous just came out. I mean, like, it came out like this last week. And it's at the point right now where you can rent it, but it's like a $9.99 like in theaters now style rental. But still, $10 is less than you would have spent for a movie ticket anyway. It stars Catherine Langford, who is the girl from 13 Reasons Why, and Charlie Plummer, who is the kid from Lead on Pete. And it's a coming-of-age love story. They are these two seniors in high school who kind of have a crush on each other and meet and start hanging out with one another, developing a relationship. All the while, something is happening to their graduating class where kids are randomly and spontaneously exploding into a shower of blood. Just like randomly, just a kid will just and blow up and die. And so it's this darkly funny, terrifying at the same time, because you're kind of always like just kind of waiting for it to happen. Like what's going to happen. It's this, but it's heartbreaking because it's kids blowing up, which is like, I mean, Jim, maybe it's up your alley. But it's very life affirming too, because these are two kids who are like, we don't know what the future will hold. Any one of us could die at any moment, literally, like, no, super, we could, like, because this, but they sort of try to give this, like, this optimistic relationship a chance. It blew me away. Like, it is a really, really, really good movie. Razor sharp, darkly funny, tense, and with some just absolutely powerful, like monologues. Like, I loved this movie Spontaneous, which if anyone's wanting to give it a shot, like, just check any of the different, like, Amazon, Apple, like those that you can do rentals from. It's like $9.99 to rent, $14.99 to purchase, so it's still pretty new, but holy shit, I loved this movie.
Awesome. Well, and where did you find that? You said it was a rental?
Yes, it's a $9.99 rental through, okay. And I did Amazon, but I think you can do Apple. It's I think it's also like on like you can do. I don't rent from YouTube, but like it's also available there for $9.99.
Yeah, I'm interested because I mean, when I saw Lean on Pete, I mean, Charlie Plummer as an actor, I think is the real deal, and he carried that movie, and so I'm interested to see what he's going to do next. So yeah, I'll definitely check that one out. Thanks, Will. Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Babe, how about you? What have you got for plugs?
So I got a plug and then like a semi-plug. Is that a thing? So my plug is a film where I had heard some things about it. I think I had seen a trailer. It's on Netflix now, so you folks at Netflix can watch it. It's, guess what? Another documentary for me.
What?
But it's a great one. It's another great one. It has a weird name called Dick Johnson is Dead. And it's directed and written by Kirsten Johnson, who did another documentary, acclaimed documentary called Camera Person a few years ago, which was really great. This film is different. It had a totally different vibe to it. It reminded me a lot of another documentary called Stories We Tell, a little bit, from years and years ago, where. So basically, the premise of this movie is Kirsten Johnson's dad, Dick Johnson, unfortunately has been diagnosed with dementia, I think, and he's kind of on a decline with his health and his mental health with dementia and early, onset Alzheimer's. He's retired, and the film is about her preparing herself and her father for the end of his life. She's trying to document as much as she can of her father, obviously. And the reason for that comes out in this movie, which I won't spoil, but it ends up being just a really touching and like shocking documentary about how people deal with the end of their lives, because he is dealing with it. And the hook of the movie is that she is putting her father into all of these like fake death scenarios. Like she kills her father off in the movie several times through acts, stuff falling from buildings that crush him. And he's actually taking part in this, like acting out the part of his death, like,
wow.
Falling down the stairs with blood gushing out, and just some really cool stuff. And just how through the making of this film, what's really, I think, astounding about the film is through the making of the film and all about his death, kind of the bond that they cement together is really what is excellent about this film. So it's called Dick Johnson is Dead. It's on Netflix. I highly recommend it.
It absolutely broke me in half, Jim.
Yeah.
Like, there's those movies where at the end you have like, like the kind of the stoic single tear cry, or the ones like the misty-eyed ones.
Yeah.
Like, I had a 30 minutes of like, I cannot stop ugly crying because of that movie, because it faces like something very real, like our, all of our own inevitable mortalities very head on, and through kind of this lens of love between this father and this daughter. Yeah, it's
funny.
The good.
I mean, it's got some funny stuff in it.
Oh yeah,
some imaginative like things that happen in this movie. It isn't just a straight documentary. There's some like crazy things that are done in the kind of like the visual style of this film that I think are really cool too.
Yes.
Awesome. Sounds like a pretty solid plug there, Jim.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. And I wanted
and
to mention.
Don't forget your. Yep.
Last week I plugged a film that I hadn't seen yet. Also, I think on Netflix. I think it's a remake of The Boys in the Band that I got around to watching. And rather than spoiling it now, what my reaction is, I am gonna set you guys up. I'm gonna tease for next week, because I think we're gonna review it next week. Is that right, guys?
It is. Yeah.
It is.
Awesome. So I know that Bobby Miller in the chat said he did see The Boys in the Band. So definitely come back next week and talk with us about it, because I think it's going to be interesting.
Hang out with the boys.
Without spoiling.
Yeah.
Without spoiling, Chris Lopez wants to know, how many tissue boxes will he need?
Not for Boys in the Band.
Oh, for Dick Johnson.
Dick Johnson.
For Dick Johnson is Dead.
For Dick Johnson.
Oh man. This one hit me pretty hard too. This is a kind of probably a 1.5 tissues box for me out of 3. But there's some stuff in there that hits pretty hard emotionally in this one. Boys in the Band, there's a couple of tense spots in it. I don't know if I would go. It's not. I don't know. I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah. We'll come back.
There's some things. There's some things in there that kind of tear you a little bit. But
I would say have a tissue box handy just in case. As you know, adult men, we probably have a tissue box somewhere in the house. Just grab it and have it ready.
Oh, Brad.
Anyway, for me this week, I'm going to take us back, fire up the Wayback Machine to December 19th, 2019. Diddle-doo, diddle-doo, diddle-doo. We did a Grizz Tracks episode where we watched Home Alone live. And we had a lot of fun with that. Yesterday, a new Blu-ray digital restoration of Home Alone 2 came out. And I know we were talking about, maybe at some point watching the second one, babe. I don't know if you're still interested. But Home Alone 2 Lost in New York, I actually kind of like better than the first movie, I think. It holds a near and dear place in my heart. There's a whole lot of nostalgia. The Talk Boy, tape recorder thing that he had in that movie was one of my favorite gadgets ever. I still have that thing in storage somewhere back in Michigan. It's a whole other side story. I have a lot of stuff in storage. But anyway, very fun film. And I'm looking forward to seeing this in Blu-ray quality. I think the last time I watched the movie was I don't know, back in 98 or something. And it was literally on VHS and the tracking was so bad that there's one part of it I couldn't even see what was going on for a couple of minutes. So I'm jazzed.
Well, especially with, we're still in the middle of spooky season, but right as we get on the other side of that, we are heading very quickly to, Christmas holiday season. And if there's something about the Home Alone movies is that they're fun Christmas time watches. So it's one of those ones where Jim, if you're kind of thinking about, I should watch this with Brad or not, just think there's a whole season coming up that would be perfect for it. No,
I just read Hammy's comment. I'm no.
I believe. Oh, well, if it helps at all, it's the last time he was
I don't know if anything can help.
It was the last time he was anything good.
There's only one thing that's going to help, and that's coming up in about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, folks, it's been a highlight of the week hanging out with all of you. I know we recorded on a non-standard night this week because we had some crazy work stuff Tuesday. The debates were Wednesday. So we kind of landed tonight. But man, we had a lot of folks in the live chat. It was great seeing all of those comments. We didn't get to read them all, unfortunately, but thank you so much to everybody who joined us. We hope that you'll come on back next week for The Boys in the Band. Watch it on Netflix. Be prepared for that discussion. In between now and then, though, Jim, where can folks chat with you online?
Find me on Twitter at JJPOutWest. And you can also find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico, which is right here.
All right.
For those of you listening, you have no idea what that is, but my name, Jim Pugliafico, is on the screen.
Yeah, if you're watching the video, you can see it. Puliafico. That's how you spell
right.
Puliafico.
Right.
Will, how about you? Where can folks interface with you?
You can watch me devolve into a puddle of existential dread on Twitter by following me at whatever cove. It'll probably be better in about 3 weeks, but for right now, it is a shit show. You can find me on Facebook as well. Just search for William Lindis. Send me a message first so that you know that you've got the right one, and 2, so I know how you found me. And 3, you can find me on letterboxd.com. It's where I rank and review every film that I watch. Just look for William Lindis. Give me a follow. I will follow you back.
All right. Excellent. And if you feel like talking some docking or anything else,
our new podcast.
You can find me on Facebook. Just search for Brad Harris. I'm the one that probably has Chub, Chaser, Bear, Otter, Pup, Boy, etc. friends in common with you. Just send a message first. Let me know you're not a bot. please. Thank you. Appreciate that. You can also find me on Letterboxd as well as Twitter at iBradPro. It's been a pleasure, folks. Looking forward to seeing you all next week for the boys in the band. Take care, everyone. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.